Alrighty, guys, thank you for tuning into the Behind Closed Doors podcast. I'm your host, Luke Vi, and here we are already on episode 3 for the semester, and we've covered 5G in the first episode. In the second episode, I met with Reese, and we talked about the JFK assassination, and now moving on to this week. This week's topic is Are Sports Rigged? And I do have a couple of special guests this week. I have Paul Heires and Lucas Sennett. So could you guys go ahead and please introduce yourselves? And could you say what your favorite sports teams are?
Yeah, this is Paul, and my sports I follow the most are football and baseball, primarily Kansas City Chiefs and Kansas City Royals, and of course the Huskers.
Yeah, this is Lucas. My primary sports that I follow are usually football and basketball. I'm a huge Minnesota fan, so I'm great for Minnesota Vikings and the Minnesota Timberwolves, along with the Huskers as well.
Well, that's great to hear from both of you. Me personally, I'm an OKC Thunder fan. I'm a Denver Broncos fan. I'm a Red Sox fan, and I'm a Huskers fan. And so just kind of dipping the hat in the bucket of all different.
All over the map.
Yeah, I know, all over the map. It's actually pretty interesting, just being in the Midwest, just trying to figure out what your favorite sports teams are, just because all the near ones like the Chiefs and the Bears for like football and then the Bulls for basketball. But getting more into Are Sports Rigged, I'm just going to straight up ask you guys, personally, do you believe Are Sports Rigged or not?
I would say partially to an extent. Overall, they cannot control every single factor of the game. But from most of the documentaries that come out and the confessions that you get from referees, players, whatever, most of them say, you're pressured into making certain calls or doing certain plays in order to make sure that the outcome of the game is it makes them the most money as the organization. So I think partially, yes.
What about you, Paul? What do you think?
I'm more on the no side. I think, especially when it comes to professional sports, these athletes are pouring their lives into this game for their livelihood. I don't think they want to jeopardize their future by doing that, but also, you're putting in a lot of hard work for the livelihood of the game and for the sport that you play, and so I feel like most of them remain loyal to their sport, and but I could see it going either way.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely can see both your guys' sides. Me personally, it's really hard to say are sports rigged. I personally would just be more like Lucas. I think with you, Paul, you make a really great point that a lot of people, they pour their entire lives into a certain sport, into a certain aspect, and the last thing they want to do is let their career go to waste just because they were fixing games to benefit somebody, just not even themselves, just benefit a power amongst them. And then, so I personally think that there's just bad apples within the batch that ruin it for everybody else. And there's also a lot of different things now, more than now is betting pushed. There's new betting apps such as ESPN Bet, and you can get into it really young as a kid. I mean, there's kids in high school that are getting into betting. They just have a bookie that are able to put bets for them, and, they're starting their first job and they're spending all their money on betting, and a lot of their early knowledge of sports is just nothing but betting, and a lot of it is what they know. And I think betting is something that has a lot to do with it. I mean, there's so much money involved in gambling in each state. And what a lot of people say on social media, Vegas made a call, which is why a game went a certain way. A kicker, Brandon Aubrey, we were talking about it earlier. I think it was his rookie season, correct? He had been 38 of 38, or what was the amount?
Yeah, something like that. He had not missed a kick up into that point, and that was including multiple 60-yarders throughout the season, and he was making them with ease, straight down the middle. I mean, he hadn't even strayed off towards any of the posts yet so far in his young season, so it was amazing to me to find out later on that the betting line was, if he scored that field goal, it would have been the over, and a lot of people would have gotten money from that, especially because the line had moved farther up because of how many people were betting the over on the game. So,
mm-hmm. And even in the NBA, we saw recently, it was last year, Michael Porter Jr.'s brother. I'm spacing on his name, but his brother. Joey Porter Jr. For the Raptors, a two-way player, he was caught fixing his own stats. He was betting the under on himself. Or I can't remember exactly if he was betting the under on himself, but he was just going for the under a lot. There was, I believe, how they usually track it is just they look for spikes in certain bets, and they look for odd bets. Because I remember seeing a documentary, I think two or 3 years ago, there was a South Alabama game that somebody in Indiana put like $500,000 on it, which stuff like that, nobody's putting $500,000 on a South Alabama football game. And so, I mean, even with him, going back to Joey Porter in the NBA, he was fixing the games himself, and he, just like his brother, put his whole life into an NBA career, only just to ruin it. Not even to benefit himself, but just to benefit other people, not even within his life. And so, do you guys believe that betting is out there more than ever nowadays, especially in the XFL? They're live lines are shown on the screen. They're shown in the broadcast. It's always talked about in the morning shows, the day shows. It's talked about in the pregame what the lines are. It's even talked about college sports. That's a big thing as well. People are talking about, we're a 7.5 point favorite. We're favored by a touchdown. And that really just becomes the focus for sports. And so do you guys believe, or do you guys feel in recent years, as betting gets pushed more, that it's causing more of a problem for fixing games?
Yeah, I mean, I think right off the bat you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's like, because it's becoming in our lives more, people are growing up with this now. I mean, you said it, there's TV channels, there's TV programs that are strictly based on who to start in your fantasy league or who to, pick the spread on this week. And so, I think, you can't even pull up ESPN without getting a line for every single, score or every single game on your ESPN app. So, I think it's definitely like becoming a bigger factor. And at the end of the day, people want money, and a lot of people will do a lot of things for said money. So it's unfortunate, and I hope it doesn't ruin the integrity of kind of a sporting community we've built in this country. But at the end of the day, like, people are going to take advantage where they can, and it's just kind of unfortunate if it does continue trending in that direction.
Yeah, and like you said, the more prevalent that it is, I feel like the more it's going to become a problem. Because I just, especially with sports betting, it just became legal in Nebraska not long ago. The popularity is just going to shoot through the roof, and it also, it affects teams. It just puts more pressure on them too to try and perform and to try to do better. And, people are going to try and figure out ways to fix a game in their favor so that they can get some sort of money. Like, a friend of a friend is going to ask you to, especially you're going to be starting to ask athletes to do something that they really shouldn't do. Like, hey, like, if you don't get as many rushing yards this game, I might split this money with you.
And as a player or a coach, I mean, I think most do their best to, kind of ignore all that outside noise. But let's be honest, everyone's human, right? Everyone has those, feelings of, hey, I kind of want to get in on this, and I have control over this since I'm the one on the field or on the court or whatever playing the game. And, unfortunately, some people that might not have their priorities straightened out make some less than desirable decisions in the long run.
Do you guys feel, as you were saying, Paul, that, you open up your ESPN app and you can just see the lines, you can see the spreads, you can see all the betting information that you would need if you wanted to go ahead and make a bet. But on the opposite end of that, do you feel just sports books and apps such as that showing those different lines just brings up more transparency within the betting world and within sports as a whole? Because even looking back to like 2005, 2010, a little bit after that, me as a kid watching football, all I ever saw was just the team, the logo, and the record on the scoreboard. Whenever you would watch pregame or postgame, to my knowledge, to what I remember, I don't ever remember lines, money lines, spreads, anything like that. People's over-unders being talked about in such a way, in such a monetary way, because gambling is money. But do you feel, just like at the end of the day, do you feel like that them offering those and just being able to show it constantly just brings more transparency to it all?
Yes and no. I mean, there are benefits, right? You're looking at a game before it's played, before it's even comes to the day, and you're saying, okay, I think that, like, based on results that we've already watched and seen, it's like, okay, this is what I think is going to happen, and I think a lot of people like the ability to kind of foresee what's going to happen, and I think those like betting lines and things like that can kind of help. But once again, you don't want that to go too far to a point where people are literally living off of just making bets on on sports games, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it goes both ways on that.
Well, to me, my thought is like the people that make money on gambling constantly, that they always talk about there's a science, there's math behind it, there's this and that. But my question has always been, is there such a pattern that people can follow that's fixed that allows them to make this much money? That's always been my thought. Maybe it's just something with like a lot of outside research or maybe insider knowledge, but kind of getting more away from the betting, but into the actual game itself. Lucas, earlier you talked about it is so hard to get absolutely everybody, everything involved to be able to fix a sports game. But you said there's different aspects that can be easily fixed. And we have seen that. We've seen referees fix games and come out and say that, yes, I blew a call. Most notably, Galarraga's, the Yankees 2009-ish, perfect game. He was 1 out away, but then there was a grounder in the infield. He threw it right before he catches it. He gets caught out, but the umpire, he calls him safe, ruining Galarraga's perfect game. And, there was such a fallout after that. The referees, there was a documentary that came out, and he admitted that he'd blown the call, that he got it wrong, but he still received death threats. He still received hate. And that's just something that you can't do. That's human error. But then even more notably in the NBA, Tim Donaghy, in the early 2000s, he came out and said that, yes, I was fixing games. And so do you feel like, what is, to your knowledge, to your opinion, what do you feel like would be the most targeted spot if if sports were to be rigged? Because my personal opinion, just basically off the referees being able to control the game, I feel like it's the referees. There's only 3 to 5, 6. There's a head officiating crew across the country in New York for like the NFL that they call in. Mike Dean, or not Mike Dean, but that's a producer.
Mike Pereira.
Dean
Blandino,
Dean Blandino. Yeah, I was getting the names mixed up. Mike Dean's a producer, but they always call them in, and I just feel like personally, it's just a lot of the times it's officiating that are rigged games. It's not the teams itself. The teams are trying to win. They want to win. There was the 1919 White Sox scandal. And so just what do you guys feel like would be the easiest part to target if sports were to be rigged?
So, yeah, I totally agree with you that the referees would be the most targeted spot. And like Tim Donaghy in the documentary that was made about him making those calls, he said that he was told, don't make certain calls against certain players because we want to see them play. We want to see them succeed. And yeah, they may, carry the ball or double dribble every once in a while, but the plays that they create are so explosive and cool, and the moments that they create, they give us more money, so don't do that. And of course, the NBA has denied any of this involvement, but the NBA especially, I feel like, is one of the most vulnerable sports for rigging because the referees have to call so many fouls during the game opposed to a lot of other sports. Like, yes, there's a lot of penalties in football, but there's also like 7 referees during the game. So there's, it's a lot harder to get everybody on the same page. Where in the NBA, there's only 3. Mm-hmm. And they also, they might be calling 30 fouls, per game. And so I just think the referees are the weak spot, the spot where it'd be easiest to rig games. And Tim Donaghy, he basically explained that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think from a baseball point of view, right, we already have like robo umps, especially for like balls and strikes.
And they're
They,
just implementing
yeah,
the check
yeah,
swing robot
they
this year.
like we could play a full baseball game with no umps. I think the only reason they're still in it is because of the controversy that it brings to the game and kind of what he was saying about, don't call, certain calls against certain players. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the reason we play this game is because it's enjoyable to watch. And so it's like, okay, well, we want the scene, right? You go to the game, you want the scene to be good, and if that means the whole fan base is arguing with the call, then that's part of the game that they don't want to get rid of with the robo umps in baseball. And so I think that's another thing is, you can say what you want about the whole like Taylor Swift and the Chiefs thing, but at the end of the day, they're trying to get as many viewers to watch. They're trying to see how much money you can make off of one football game. And so if you bring in a whole other group of people, just with that little bit of entertainment, with that, last second comeback, we're not going to call any penalties on the defense because we want to see this offense, or on the offense because we want to see them score, you know what I mean? Just kind of setting the scene, make it more enjoyable for fans so that, like I said, it's all about money.
As you make a really great point, because especially with like the Chiefs, it's become a huge topic in the last like year. With Taylor Swift, there's a lot of controversy last year with NFL fans. Taylor Swift being talked about, shown during broadcasts. So many people had so many issues with it. But that brings up a good point within the aspect of not even just Taylor Swift, but her boyfriend Travis Kelce and the Chiefs. Do you think that sports and pro organizations, they pick trophy athletes in quotations, to kind of put up on a pedestal higher than everybody because, it's the face of the company? At the end of the day, when you think of NBA in the 90s, it was Michael Jordan and the Bulls. When you think of, the last 20 years of football, going from 2000 to 2020, you think of New England Patriots and Tom Brady, and that reign. So do you think that, especially now more so, because back in the day social media wasn't a big deal, but especially now with social media, do you feel like sports organizations pick favorite athletes to favor over one choice or another, be more harsh towards than the other, give more leeway than the other, give more, just screen time and love in general? Do you guys feel like that is a problem in pro sports that leads to that sort of rigging feeling?
I mean, yeah. Um, I feel like, especially when they had Michael Jordan in the game, like, I saw a video once where they went through and they went through all the like fouls that he committed, and it was like, things that didn't get called. And I'm sure if you did that for every player, they'd have a great montage like he did. But this was a 3-hour long video, and it was just highlights. So it was just, every 5-10 seconds, it was a new play. And he had 3 hours of highlights of him, committing fouls and not getting called for it. So I think definitely, they have to treat different players differently. I know, especially for the NFL, it's most quarterbacks get the benefit of the doubt, especially for roughing the passer calls. And I am an avid person, an avid fan of football is a tough sport. I don't like to see quarterbacks or even players in general getting hurt, but I feel like at a certain point, you have to look at the play and be like, that was not a rough play. He's not doing this intentionally. Why is this a penalty? It shouldn't be a penalty.
Because at the end of the day, it's football. We've known people have played football. You've known big hits getting knocked on your butt ever since you were 6, 7, 8 years old, and you were first putting on pads and a helmet, and they were telling you to run the Oklahoma drill, and you had no idea what it was, just that you grew up hating Oklahoma because of it. And so, Paul, what's your opinions on it? I know being a Chiefs fan is a little bit of a harder topic for you, but what's your opinion? Just do you think pro sports favor other athletes over another, and that leads to the thought of sports being rigged?
Yeah, I mean, and I can't even really deny it at this point. Patrick Mahomes with all the State Farm commercials and what have you. I mean, you want to, like, people want to go to the game to watch the players they like do well. I mean, that's just the bottom line, right? You see it with Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers, right? You see it with LeBron James and Steph Curry in the NBA, right? You want to see these big money, big time players do well. And so I feel like it does have a little bit of an effect. I mean, you could even go to the college ranks, and once again, it comes back to money, right? Watching like the big noon kickoff like commercials, we're advertising the biggest games, and they want to have the best players on display for their viewers. I mean, you saw it with like Caitlin Clark in Iowa and their basketball team last year, right? Everyone wants to come and watch Caitlin Clark be good at basketball. My opinion, I mean, I'm a Nebraska fan, but in my opinion, she wasn't as great as everyone was hyping her up to be. But that's just how it is, and you want to see those star players do well. And like I said, it all comes back to money. So the most money we can make off of one player's likeness, they're just going to roll with it.
Do you think so? With sports being rigged, do you feel so? It's like an agreement that when people say sports are rigged, it's because of monetary. It's because of monetary values. Because, like I said earlier, think back to the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Black Sox, just because I think that's the nickname that came up with it. Do you think now more days, because back in the day, obviously, there was money behind it, but it was to change the record books, change the history books, to say who won and who didn't. But now, like when games are rigged, your first thought is, Vegas made a house call. A lot of people were betting sports books were going to lose a bunch of money if this certain outcome happened. And so now thinking back, do you think it's more so when sportsers say they're rigged, they're wanting one team to win over the other, or is it because of going back to that gambling is pushed now and it's more popular than ever?
I always draw it back to the money. Gambling is popular, but I know that money drives most things, but I don't think you can call down to the coach on the field and be like, you have to miss this field goal. I mean, they're so dedicated and so driven, and when you listen to their interviews, like, I just can't imagine them being like, okay, boss man told me that.
There's no way. There's no way everything's fabricated.
Like scripted. Everybody. It fits the script. It fits the script.
It's not. Yeah, we're not sitting down at a conference table, at a script reading at the beginning of the season. Okay, so this team's running the Super Bowl. No, I think it kind of goes back to what you're saying with the betting lines and saying like, okay, well, it happens in the stock market, right? Everyone goes towards one. Oh, this team looks good this week. And then all of a sudden, the betting lines are kind of unbalanced, and then maybe something comes of that. But
yeah. Well, I think, because like betting lines, they first get released, and then people are like, oh my God, this line is so broken, I'm going to bet the over. Then as you bet the over, it brings that,
it shifts.
It brings the mean up and all that good stuff, and it shifts. And so I think that's another aspect that people are saying are rigged, because, when they open at minus 14.5, but now when it closes, they're only minus 3.5. But, at the end of the day, the people say it's Vegas rigging, but in reality, it's just that it's people betting causing that line to shift, because, Vegas doesn't know much more than, the best of the best gambling researchers out there. But I really do appreciate you guys for stopping in and talking in for a little bit about this topic. It's really interesting, just because even still now, it's still dynamic. It's still ever changing, because even now, like ESPN Bet is one of the newest app, and there's new things, there's new regulations, because even now, like we said, after Joey Porter Jr.'s, I don't believe that you're allowed to bet on the under for two-way contract players anymore. And so last question, do you guys think that betting, should there be a more universal, more just like national regulation behind it instead of like state to state? Because I feel like, me personally, it's just way too up in the air. It's way too confusing, because even if like you live in Nebraska, you have a Nebraska license, you can still drive across the state to Iowa, park on the side of the highway. As long as your VPN, as long as your address is showing like you're in Iowa, you can bet. Do you guys feel like that there just needs to be more universal regulation behind it, and maybe that will help control just these thoughts and these ideas behind sports are rigged, or is it just something that it's still a free for all and that just the state should decide?
I mean, I definitely think that it doesn't really matter who regulates it because they're going to bet regardless. I mean, like you were talking about earlier, you have bookies. And you just call that guy up and be like, I'll transfer you the money. And that guy could live in a state where it's legal. And so, yes, even if they did it internationally, they just go to a different country or something to bet on it. They'll find a way. The people who really want to bet are going to find a way to bet.
Right, and going off of that, I mean, if it does go to national, more, less localized and more nationalized legislation, I feel like it's going the other way, right? It's going to be more states are going to allow betting just because, I mean, at the same time, like you said, if it's not legal, you're still going to find a way to do it, right? There's still going to be underground, betting going on anyway. And so the way they legislate that is, okay, we're just going to make it legal, but now that it's out in the open, but then that complicates things, right? Obviously, college athletes and professional athletes are not allowed, but who's to say they have a private conversation with someone before the game and say, you know what, I'm just going to go 25% in this game and we'll just bet the under or whatever, you know what I mean?
Because that does happen, some people, they have the over, over is 29.5 points. They score 26 in the first 3 quarters. They play the fourth, but they take 1 or 2 shots,
And it sucks because it's like, as sports fans, we don't want that kind of stuff going on. But unfortunately, I mean, the millions of dollars that they're getting paid on their contracts isn't enough, and but
got to find more avenues for money. But
yeah, I think that's the bottom line.
Well, I appreciate you guys for stopping in today. Again, Paul, Heires, and Lucas Sennett, thank you again for stopping by to talk about it if sports are rigged. And I want to appreciate you guys for tuning in to the Behind Closed Doors podcast. I'm your host, Luke Vi, and this is a lot of fun to do. I hope you guys tune in next week. We'll be having Reese back from last week, the JFK assassination episode. Him and I will be going over another super secret topic. At the moment, just make sure that you tune in next week here on YouTube, the Behind Closed Doors podcast.